This is Next 5 Minutes. The title for today, You Don't Know Me, You Don't Know My Story. Now, this should serve to help us in our relationships, both at home and at work. And I want us to use what we talk about today in order to write our next chapter. We'll look at how difficult or how easy it is to influence people in our personal and professional relationships. Now, has anyone ever told you, you don't know me? This means they perceived you as judging them incorrectly or underestimating them. You see, there's something about them that you don't know that could put you at a disadvantage. Look at our current headlines. You'll see a multitude of conspiracy theories and people to believe them. We're shocked when these conspiracy theories gain popularity. And can you imagine, some people still think the earth is flat? Yeah, they even have a website. What about our professional relationships? Are we struggling to motivate our teams? Why? Maybe someone on a team is struggling. Why? What about our personal relationships? Are we struggling with our significant other? Why? I believe this all has a lot to do with this one thing, their story. And that's the basis for the next 5 minutes. So what's in someone's story? It's simply this. It's a combination of the person's belief system, their needs and wants, their desires, their accomplishments, their failures, and their memories. For the Flat Earther movement, that theory aligns with the subscriber's need and desire for that theory to be true. Now, if they can convince others of this, that will be an accomplishment. And of course, any memory that they have of convincing others of this in the past would convince them or spur them on. The more people they get to believe that this is true, the more true they believe it is. Now, you can substitute the flat earth conspiracy theory with any other, and it should work out the same. And so these theories or anything that someone tells you does not have to be based in fact. The operator only has to submit information that aligns with that part of the subscriber's story or their feelings associated with that part of their story. So why is the story significant? Because you are your story and your story doesn't change. But there are times when we can use this to our advantage. Okay, so we understand that we are our story, right? Our story doesn't change. The saying that people don't change is true. Let's go to work, literally. I have this question for our supervisors. Which would you prefer your direct reports to consider you as, a manager or a leader? I'm sure you chose the latter, right? But how you view yourself and how your direct reports views you could be vastly different. Both modes, managing and leading, are equally important, but you should not operate in any one of them 100% of the time. If you try to manage people all the time, you're going to exhaust them. If you try to lead people all the time, you're going to exhaust yourself. More importantly, we need to know the difference between the two. Newer supervisors may not be aware of this difference. And for those of us who do, we sometimes struggle with a mix. So there's this sliding scale, but I can't tell you when to move it and by how much to move it. This will depend on what? Where your team is in their story. I was once one of those leaders that thought you can see the problem just by looking at the metrics because the numbers don't lie. They tell a story. And to some extent, this is true, but it's not reliable. And I think I was saying that only because I wanted to sound smart. The story is not in the metrics. You might find details, but not enough to carry out the awesome turnaround plan that you have. The story that the metrics tells us is this. Someone is performing, someone is underperforming. Based on this, we'll seek out the low performers. What's the problem? But what's the problem with this question? What's wrong with this approach? The direct report, they will not give us their story. You see, they're afraid of you because you're acting like a manager. In their mind, they think managers fire, leaders inspire. And because we don't sound like we're inspiring them, they're afraid of us. If we act like a manager in that moment, they will perceive that they are in a place of weakness. And so they're only going to give us details, like what went wrong. But that's not the story. As an aside, never run with just the details. That's like running with scissors. It's dangerous. Now, in this case that I'm outlining, if a manager does run with a list of details, it sounds like this. So what I'm going to do is address all these issues that you have, and then you can do your job, right? Wrong. Even with a completed list, you too are now in that place of weakness. Here's what happened. In the first place, we failed to get their story. In the second place, we think that we're getting their story, but we just got details. We're still wrong. You can't manage people out of a low place. You have to lead them out. Now, here's the ironic part about the whole thing. People will let you manage them. That's right. I said let you manage them because there's a benefit for them, like a paycheck. But if you take the time to know your team's story, they'll let you lead them to your vision. You don't like what I said? When I was a new supervisor, I mistakenly thought that my direct reports had to follow me because of my title, because I was their leader, right? Well, that's not right. And I wasn't acting like a leader. I didn't know them and I didn't know their story. I gave them orders and expected them to follow. I was nice about it, but wrong about it too. See, we should not expect people to follow us because we're their leader. They should follow us because we are leading. Listen, people are not fools. If you manage them, they're just going to treat you like a manager. That's how my first team treated me. Okay, so how do we lead people? I already gave you a hint. This is where we separate the leader from the manager. You need to know their story. Not every detail, just the parts of their story that line up with your agenda and your vision. Ask them about their accomplishments. Ask them what are their memories associated with their accomplishments. Ask them what they believe about accomplishments. Which reminds me, with new hires, we get a lot of information, right? But who goes back to utilize this information? Are we just making up interview questions on the fly? Or are the questions designed to get the candidate's story for the purposes of leading them? Knowing the person's story on the front end is important so that we align with the right people when we're hiring. Knowing the person's story on the back end allows us to lead the right people more effectively. And this, incidentally, is the same technique that we can use on a romantic interest. When we meet people, we generally ask, so what's your story, right? In this case, we want to know everything. This way, we can decide if based on what they say, if we'll decide to proceed and how we should proceed. We need to get their story to get closer to them. You see how it parallels with leadership? You want to get closer to people, you need to get their story. Now you know you're getting the person's story when they begin to describe in detail the feelings and emotions associated with that part of their story. And if you listen carefully, you can select parts of your story that align with their story and offer that back to them. You see, now we're making chemistry. And this is still leading. In this case, we're leading them into a relationship. But don't make this mistake. Never recall a part of their story in order to make a point. Don't bring up the fact that, hey, you told me you had money issues a year ago. What's your problem with money? First of all, rude. Second of all, some parts of their story is only for your consumption. That is, only they get to say it, but you never get to repeat it. The reason they share these parts of their story is so that you can select the appropriate parts of your story to match theirs. If you get this right, not only will you gain a romantic interest, but you could also gain a friend in the same person. And I said it that way for a reason, because not every romantic interest is your friend. The point is, we're not trying to teach the person a lesson with their own story. Without training, planning, and maybe a lot of history with that person, this could backfire. So we are leading the person, but it's through influence. Now, if I get this right, I don't have to continue influencing them or leading them. Why? I told you, because now that's become a part of their story and their story doesn't change. I make it my business to know the story of those people who are important to me. I need to know their story so well that when they walk through the door, even if they don't say a word, I know exactly where they are in their part of the story because their story doesn't change. Now we know when people say, you don't know me, that's short form for you don't know me, you don't know my story. No sign off, fade to black.
For those of us looking for romantic interest, stop loving people just because they showed up for love. They can show up to our story, but do they know the details or the full story? Can they meet us where we are in our story? Now, back to my story. Chapter 4. Today I'm going to have a good day because I want to have a good day. Today I will lead my purpose and manage my principles. So, what's your story?